Well, founding director of Cross Labs, board of directors of ISAL, the International Society for Artificial Life, professor at University of Tokyo, and you have somehow found time in your busy schedule to come and talk to us today about how to communicate with alien minds. So come on up. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too.
All right. Can everybody hear me? Is that the reasonable level of audio? All right. Otherwise, stop me and I'll shout instead. Very nice to meet you. This is a topic I really love talking about. Let's see if I can reopen that here. So I picked a few things, a few examples for us tonight. Oh, thank you. Amazing. And in this way, so just 3 examples on hybrid intelligences, a topic that is very dear to me. And one example is going to be more about the communication channel between intelligences, how we can translate between things that are embedded in very different substrates, and touch on something that we call private information. How can we share something like tacit experiences or emotions? How is that even possible? And how can we extend that maybe to wide cases? And I'll talk about expanding our own cognition, and maybe we can do that with AI, maybe we cannot. Little word on my background, maybe we haven't met before. Nice to meet you. My background is in cryptography, actually, and I guess computer science, NLP, that kind of stuff. I founded a few companies, mostly in Europe, a bit in the US, and then I moved back into science. I came to Tokyo, and I focused on the emergence of communication between robots or artificial agents, and that includes also many kind of agents, and you see here a very messy swarm. I did a lot of that. A few applications, but mostly fundamental science on that. And then I moved to the US for a few years. I was at the institute in Princeton, and also in New York. We founded an institute there studying the possibility of synthetic consciousness, and also fundamental questions about how awareness arises in the world of physics. How does it happen in the universe? This is something that we somehow continue. There was also collaboration with Tokyo Tech, and last part of my focus has been really strongly on hybrid intelligences, and we founded a thing called Cross Labs. There's a bunch of things that I've done. I really like. I'm one of those serial founders. I really enjoy that. Here are a few. Because I like to acknowledge them. It's not really thanks to me. A lot of people are pushing that, so I like to advertise a little bit. But they exist. But my favorite one right now is Cross Labs. Whenever you are in Kyoto, please feel free to visit. We have a small research institute. And we are sort of focused on the intersection of artificial intelligence and natural intelligence. And of course, there are many examples of that. And in AI, we don't limit ourselves to neural networks. We really look at any kind of computing, including very unconventional materials. And same thing for natural intelligences. We try to focus not only on human and some animals, but also wide things that you might not consider able to compute and learn. Here are 3 examples of that. One is distributed cognition, for example, and you would have many entities, so something of our brain, many neurons, that would have emergent patterns leading to very strong learning, robust learning capacity to memorize, but also generalize different types of knowledge. We were focused also, this is linear as a sort of metaphor for this, but within our simulations, we try to push for open-ended learning. How many people have heard of open-ended evolution before? All right. So for people who haven't heard that before, so you know how deep learning is really data-driven, and if you stop feeding data in, it's going to stop learning. That's very annoying, isn't it? A bit like this light when I go across here. Instead of that, we would like to have a sort of open-ended scientist, an AI scientist that would keep learning even though they stop being fed data. They would still derive equations like a mathematician does. And the last part is we also focus on phenomenology, and maybe artificial neurophenomenology is one way to capture that. It's the study of experience, including artificial methods, and studying really what are the mathematical bases of, say, consciousness, and how to explore those spaces. How many dimensions are there, and how can we mathematize, make sense of our own experiences in a scientific way? All right, these are really unifying three parts of cognition, and I think there's a synthetic part on top. There's the biological part. Thanks, Blaine, for mentioning. I have a hat with ISA. It's the International Society for Artificial Life. I'm the current president of that. I'm trying to push this side of science. Very exciting, and yet not very well known in AI. Just a few people like David Hyde, Ken Stanley, and so on. And I push for this. I think it's so interesting and so creative. It's really trying to get inspired, but also creating systems that have properties of the living. And the last part would be synthetic, right? All of this study of really possibly conscious systems that are synthetic, and exploring wide possibilities. All right, we are funded by the industry mostly, and we also do a lot of things with them that are sort of applied, and there are a few examples here. And so we have a sister entity that is Cross-Compass, that does the AI part, and we're completely open, a bit more open than OpenAI. And we are publishing everything. Everything is open. You can find it online, everything we do. And we don't focus exactly on AI, that's not what we do. And then, it's just that we try to focus on whatever is going to be next, the next boom in AI. And we don't pretend that we have the solution. We're just trying a bunch of things and see what sticks. I want to thank a lot of people before I forget and enter in those things. This is not only my research. This is my team and collaborators. They're amazing people. Please visit us in Kyoto next time. And there are also a bunch of collaborators in other universities, including here in Tokyo and abroad. All right, back to these three things. You know what? Let's start with this example I have on communication. Those are very small examples, and I hope we can chat a little bit. I have to apologize. I have to take a train tonight, so I won't be able to discuss at the end like we usually do, and it's really fun. So I'm really sorry about that. It sort of didn't work that way. All right, one example, communication. But I'm really happy if we can discuss it a little bit now. So interrupt me, be wild.
We know where to find you in Kyoto.
You know where to find me.
And we have double minutes for you in Q&A later. So.
Oh, amazing, thank you. It's very generous, Ilya. All right, communication. My example I really like is those patterns. Maybe you've seen those before. The sort of memorations of many birds. What is amazing is that they have, of course, only local transfer of information, and just based on that, they self-organize in those huge patterns. This is half a metaphor, but this is also something I spent a lot of time studying. So I mentioned this as a sort of not only background, but to mention that you can actually study those things with Shannon information kind of measures. We can measure things like transfer entropy, different basically proxies for causality, to understand how the big patterns are very difficult to understand, how you can make sense out of them. And really science is about this. It's to find the rules of causality. And this is exactly what we do. And because it's hard to do in nature, we do it in a lot of those simulations. And this is exactly what we are trying to do with the example I'm going to give. Basically, we use this Shannon. He was a very playful person, and we try to be as playful as he was. We use those information-based method, you could call that data analysis in some way, to sort of tackle the dream situation or the movie-like situation of, I don't know how many people have watched this movie, The Arrival, or read the book, Story of Us. Ted Chiang is one of my favorite sci-fi authors. And what would happen if aliens arrived on Earth, right? How would we even start communicating with them? Because they're based in possibly very different embodiments and environments, different physics possibly that have been exposed to very different contexts. Where do we start? Because as a joke in Tokyo Tech a few years ago, when chatting about this, and then I wrote a bit about that, we reached the conclusion that the only way would be to try and kill them. The reason for that is that maybe this is the only thing that we know they care about. You want to find something you're sure that the other entity cares about. Otherwise, the signal might be lost. And the only thing that we know about all living systems is ... whatever you are going to say there, you have to use that in order to communicate with them, right? One thing we think we know, and that led to that sort of half joke, is that they try to self-repair, to continue existing in time. And that's sort of, if you want to disturb that, you try to kill them, or to help them survive, so that the origin of that little joke. And in all of those, Stan Lem, similar story, you try to establish communication with something very different. We did that, not with aliens, but we started with something that is already embodiment-wise very different from us. Have you been to the Miraikan, the Museum of the Future? Maybe you've seen this thing. It's called a Nukabot. So basically, you put a bunch of bacteria inside this little reservoir there, and you put a bunch of sensors. Carbon dioxide, level of acidity, and etc. You can measure a few things, and those are detected and converted to a signal. And the game is then to convert that into language, so you can talk with the bacteria. Let's give you an example. I wonder if the sound is going to work. Let's say that's a no, so let's push it there. You can ask questions, and it's going to respond. And this using very simple rules at first. And then we made a next version, and it's going to be messy because it's going to be messy because it's overlapping the other video. But essentially here we're using something, a version of ChatGPT to do this. This is one nice way to do it, and you are essentially talking with the bacteria. So it turns out that you can use some of those techniques based on large language models, or a version of that, or a subset of that, embeddings, for example, in order to convert signals and transfer meaning from one embodiment to another. And there are tricks that we are using. It's not perfect, but that's something that we were pushing for in the lab. Another thing that you could do is something that is not completely new. Maybe you remember this paper by Alan Turing, right? Maybe you've seen the movie, The Imitation Game. It's the Turing test, of course, right? And maybe it's a very similar game to this. Another version of that is this thing. What is this called again? Let me see. It's a perceptual crossing experiment, PCE. Essentially, you're moving a mouse and it's going to vibrate whenever it encounters an obstacle. Now, certain obstacles are moving obstacles, and they're moved by other people who also have a mouse. So now the game is, through this very simple one-dimensional environment, to recognize other agents that are human like you. And very simple. You could play this kind of game in any kind of virtual reality kind of game, but this one is so simple and very pretty, and that's why cognitive scientists study it. Same thing. How do you, what makes you able to recognize another entity that is living, or that is human, or a certain category of cognitive or living systems? So what can you do in order to capture the essence of life or cognition within it. It turns out humans are very good at this. They can recognize much larger than 50%, so much better than chance. They can recognize another human. If they are friends, it goes way up, and I think it's situated around 90% or so, which is amazing. So there's something magical about this. All right, one last example. It turns out that a bit like those experiments, if you narrow the channel, if you make the channel very small, right, it feels like you can transmit much more. And it's true, if you have too much information, it's hard to make sense out of it. But if you narrow it down, there's something that you make that you can make use of. Is my bottle by any chance? All right. In this example, we used a NUCA bot, and we made bacteria play chess, or in this case, Ego, as the game of Go, with humans, and it was pretty fun. And it turns out you can do that human to human and perceive the personality of the other human through the game of Go. And you can apply the same thing with any entity. We tried with AI and we tried with bacteria. And you feel the personality of the bacteria. And it's not just, of course it's fun, but also that trillion of creatures, viruses, microbes living on us and around us. Trillions, right? It's not billions, it's trillions of those creatures. They're already part of our embodiment. And those kind of experiments can make us conscious, more aware, and able to communicate directly, sense parts of our embodiment, and maybe enlarge our sense of embodiment in our humanity. Eventually, you can make humans larger, and maybe you can extend human to human, also human to other things, including maybe technology. So this is using, of course, large language models. I have other talks where I talk too much about that, so maybe I won't focus too much on that. There are a few things that are fun that we've done recently, and we're basically trying to explore new ways to use those. It's really exploring how you can use embeddings. Those are random examples of course, drawing. This was used for Mid-Journey later. This one is the exploration of how language models are able to do math. It turns out, there are some tricks that we discovered that we can make them do. It's just understanding the limits of what they can do makes us understand better our own abilities and how we classify human cognition. And this one it's fun. There are things that you cannot ask because of data constraints. There are things you cannot ask the AI to generate in images. For example, dark images. If you want to generate a black alley, it's going to be very difficult. Things like that the LM is not the model is not used to generating. So we explore a lot of those things. My point here is really that there are many kinds of minds, and when we talk about alien minds, we can talk about bacteria, other animals, and maybe AI. We should consider that they're not human-like, and I really like referring to what Yann Lequin says about reinforcement learning being this cherry on the cake. You've seen this slide probably before. And there's this very nice depiction that was on Twitter for a while by Helen Turner, I believe, who depicted this as this being the very nice human-like empathizing. You can re-empathize with the LLM. Looking at this is the nice reinforcement learning with human feedback, and behind that there is this giant monster. That it's not a monster because it's bad or anything like that. It's just so different from anything human. And once you understand that, you really take this problem very seriously, and you really want to look for techniques to take those questions as scientific questions. All right, this was a long example, wasn't it? I have a false timer here that tells me I'm 31 minutes in. That sounds fake.
Yeah, you had starting minutes later.
Right. How much time do I have left?
About 10 minutes.
All right. Okay, second example is private information. I think there's a lot of information around us, right? That's what I teach at the University of Tokyo, and so some of the classes, I point out how much information you're not conscious of, right? But one particular type of information is not outside, it's not out there, it's inside. And those things are very difficult to translate to another human being. For example, pain or thirst. There's a bunch of things that even if you think you can communicate them, how much pain, what kind of pain, right? We have words for those, and in a Wittgensteinian way, we have done a trial and error kind of method in order to communicate them, and we have succeeded to some extent, but really communicating them is difficult. And we have a direction at the lab where we try to explore really the difficult ones. And it starts with color perception, for example. And in this study, we explore how many dimensions there are in color perception. And I don't know. Do you have an idea? It turns out physically you can do it physically. But in terms of really the mental space, if you explore the space of the mind, how many dimensions are there in there? And it turns out for most people it's 3, but it's very diverse. And we have probably very different ways to represent the information in a phenomenological way around us. And because it's fun, we also have created a machine that does taninjutsu, hypnosis on people. And it's just for fun, but it works really well. We were very surprised by our results. And it's things like this with generated voices. It's sort of adapting that to the individual. And thanks to that, we can sort of assess and change suggestibility, perception, sense of agency, and a bunch of things so that they accomplish tasks better. And we can also start working on studies about phobia and different psychological effects. It's very fun too. Another kind of study that uses the same kind of set of techniques is adapting movies. If you watch Netflix or something like that, sometimes the movie has just the wrong timing. Maybe it has just the wrong switching to the next scene, and it just misses completely your emotional response to it. Well, this is sort of adapting the movie to you, or it's adapting it to you following what the director wanted to express, right? And we created some techniques here that you make use of the EEG signals in order to adapt that on the fly. And so this is working live as you watch whatever next Netflix movie you're watching later tonight. You could turn this on and have a personalized experience. This is sort of dangerous too, because you can sort of exploit that. And maybe I won't go too much into this, but there is an adversarial part to that. And a bit like you can exploit now the engines that play Go, and actually humans can win again. Well, you can also exploit humans and make them do tasks, and in some studies recently we make them do things, involuntary actions, just play during another task that they are playing, like a very simple game. They would perform an action that we have dictated them to. All right, last example, and then is that fine for time? Yeah. This is a sort of general thing that I have for artificial life, and hybrid life is going to have some very big impact in the future. And it's because cybernetics, we talk about that for a while now, but there have been amazing advances, and those are not always your Neuralink kind of advances. I like Neuralink, right? And it's going to work at some point. It's just pretty slow, and I don't think it's the best way to do it. On the other hand, there are other types of cyborgs that already exist with plants, or here cells of frogs, and these are based on xenopus frogs, so that's why we call them xenobots. There's a version that recently came out from Mike Levin's lab at Tufts University, and this is mixing basically human cells that are basically hybrids between AI and human stem cells. And you can use that for drug delivery and all sorts of different difficult tasks, including maybe cancer cells, treating tumors, and so on. Very impressive research, and it's not going first with what you're thinking most obviously about when you think of cyborgs. These are very different, various types of cyborgs, and yeah, it's a very big field. Part of it is a lot of simulations too. Yeah, maybe look it up if you'd like. There's going to be there's a bunch of events that we organize about this, but also we'll have the next conference is going to be in Copenhagen, but in 2 years we'll have it in Kyoto. So I'm organizing that with David, who's here in Tokyo as well, focusing on collective intelligence, and it's at the same time as the Expo 2025 in Osaka. So if you are not from here, that's an excuse to come to Japan again. I want to finish on a sort of a larger picture about those hybrids. And there's a bunch of research that we got out recently about, you know, we humans really tend to, it seems like we think we are very important. And sure we are, I think I'm important. I value my life, I value my experience. And it feels like we're the center of the world, and that's a mistake that we've done again and again and again. What if we weren't? What if the rights we have could be shared? What about robots? There's a bunch of examples, but not only robots. How about hybrids, right? So what if I have a prosthetic? What about me with the phone? What about the rights about that? What's the moral consideration or considerability for any kind of other entity? And we have already trouble with animals, so I understand that artificial beings or hybrid beings are a stretch, but recently we're pushing that, and we're also taking from different wisdom traditions, and we created a center in Kathmandu. Check that out. It's called CSAS. It's a new research center for those weird questions about diverse minds. Maybe last picture is, maybe I'll finish on this. There are different types of tools. I was just talking about that earlier with my friends there. There are tools that seem to be offloading our intelligence. We offload our intelligence like we use a calculator. And ChatGPT right now is a calculator. You just ask it questions, it responds. Ask another question, it responds. It's really offloading the computation to something else. And we'll do that more and more, and it's great. By the end of the day, some people are afraid that, of course, you might offload all the interesting stuff and you're left with the boring stuff and you do nothing interesting. Well, it's up to us. I want to say it's really a design question. You could design the interface to not only offload intelligence, but augment intelligence. And this is what we talked about in the US just a few months ago. The very large meetings were focused on augmenting intelligence. I think that's the right direction, and it's really a choice. We could design tools that, like the abacus, like the blind person's cane, really augment our senses, right? And the bunch of things that I said about translation between entities, that's it, right? You extend your senses to something that is different, and you can use that something else. It could be partially autonomous, but it could also send you percepts. And this kind of technology, I don't think we're used to designing it yet. And there's a bunch more. All right, I show this one and we'll end it. I always say that, but I promise this is the last one. Because it's fun. So this is a piece of art. You can wear this VR set. And now we augmented it with a few more sensors. And you can feel what it's like to be an LLM. Actually, more precisely, a part you can choose. You can navigate the LLM as well. And it feels very weird. So I invite you to come to our next place we'll exhibit this, next conference. You come to talk to us and you'll wear it and maybe you'll tell me what it feels like to be another being. All right, I end it here. Thank you.
It's slightly less than 10 minutes for questions.
All right.
But we know where to find you.
Yeah.
It's on the track.
Sounds good.
Questions?
strongly disagree with what I said. All right, I learned something.
Well, I was wondering about this idea of communicating with alien minds, that we experience this problem every day. When I try to communicate with you, from my perspective, you're effectively an alien. We share some kind of low-dimensional approximation of the meaning of the terms that we use to exchange information, but what the real meaning of words is for me is very different to what it is for you, because it requires effectively you need to understand your cultural context, your upbringing, your education, and so on and so forth. Do you think that current large language models can be used to sort of bridge that gap so that we could become more aligned as a species before we start even contemplating the idea of looking to a fundamentally different alien mind?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Actually, we designed something like this with my colleague from Waseda, Dominic Chen. We designed a little robot. You can put it on the table when you have a meeting. It's emitting noises, and it's sort of facilitating with similar techniques. The math behind it is sort of similar. It's facilitating your communication with the other person. And the reason is that in different languages you have different types of back channeling, or aizuchi in Japanese. You do different and all those sounds. And it sort of facilitates, and it's you sometimes lost in translation in that way. And I think you're right. Cultural background and so on are something we didn't touch yet. I think it's very interesting. We do very basic things for now, but yeah, I really like what you're saying. So I guess we can recontextualize different languages between humans first.
I have kind of the opposite kind of concept. So like, thinking like octopi and birds, they both have very different neural architectures than ours, but we still seem to be able to communicate with them on some level.
Yeah,
So it seems like
What makes you think we communicate well with octopi?
I'm not sure about the octopi, but the bird, like birds, definitely like we can like towards parrots.
What makes you think we communicate well with birds?
No, they respond in ways that we expect.
So there's something about this feedback loop, what we call the Barnum-Four effect in psychology. It's that you tend to overestimate your understanding of empathy within the other thing, and maybe you're hurting the thing, but you interpret the signal as, oh yeah, that's the human-like thing. They love it. Actually, they're trying to breathe. Things like that. I'm not saying this is the case in any way, right? But we might slightly miss things, and that's okay. So I think this is the kind of stuff we want to push on, right? The different architecture might not matter with those kind of techniques as long as you have an interface. But I wouldn't aim at. So the difference is you're interacting with the whole octopode, and our approach is we narrow the signal to make it very very narrow channel, and we find value in that. I really like that, so I think it's an example of it.
Good.
Oh, yeah. So my question is, like, I'm really interested in your last slide about if we were the large language model, what is our experience? Probably most of us cannot join your conference or the show. Could you please let us know a little bit?
Yeah. So it's a sort of baby project for now. I want to make it much larger. I want to make it able to explore also parts of our bodies. I want for the setup to extend our awareness to parts of our body, for example, or be a crowd, right? So having a sort of a trick, and once you learn the trick, it's maybe some techniques, meditation, hypnosis teach you to do that. You can do it on your own. So this is meant as a sort of crutch to make you reach that. So if I had to describe the experience, it feels like this is opening my mind to, oh yeah, this exists, right? But it's not replacing it. I don't want to say that we'll wear those things all the time. I want to use them as augmentation tools, and once you have discovered it, you can learn those spaces.
I see.
Yeah, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Can you give us an update on the status of the moral obligations to artificial life project? I mean, I've wondered if I'm doing research on machine systems, I should get ethical review panel approval in the same way that I need it if I'm working with cockroaches or rats or.
Right. I have worked a little bit with lawyers, but I haven't done any significant. There's no result yet on that side. So this is at research stage, and we have recommendations. If you find my name and Eric Schwitzgebel, you'll find the set of papers, and we have basically a list of things we recommend paying attention to. And one of them is, for example, attribution of awareness to another entity. And you know how, I don't know, maybe I have a puppet that I care about, and I think it's conscious. How does this affect the rest of you? You don't think it's conscious. So problems like that are important to sort of analyze completely. And there are many cases, right, like where people think that LLM are fully conscious and so on. Actually, conscious is a terrible word. That we should stop using. There are different types of consciousness, and should be much more precise. Just use this like everybody else, like a kid, but I should be more careful. And so we do exactly that kind of work in those papers.
Yeah, I guess it seems. I mean, I think possibly my thinking on this started after that Future of Life petition letter last year, which seems very, very stark. And it seemed to me that if we started spinning up ethical review boards, we would start accumulating data on our own and experience on our own, and so we would just thicken the interface with this question.
There are two very different directions that shouldn't be different, but they're part of the effort of trying to be mindful to any kind of cognitive affective system, right? And one of them protects humans and only is centered on humans, and our good friends at FLI are focusing on that. And we focused on all beings. And of course, if you are also kind to a plant, you're very likely to be kind to all humans as well. And we want to enlarge a bit the picture. This doesn't go against them, but it's a different focus. I have time?
Just for you, Brendan.
Thank you very much, Leo. So you gave a very broad, like it seems like the projects that you shared with us, quite interesting, but a very broad smattering of exploring what it's like to interact and communicate with other beings. And I'm wondering, do you have a crisp operationalization or understanding what it means to communicate in the first place? Like if you're sitting in front of a tree and staring at it, it kind of is a communication in some way, but kind of isn't. What is your understanding of the thing that you're doing? Do you have a crisp kind of...
There are different parts to that. Right, so yes.
Okay.
So the answer is yes. It's also yes in both sides. It could be phenomenologically for the experience part, and the other part is the computer science-y part of communication, which I've done my PhD thesis on. I don't want to say read my thesis, but if you contact me, I'll send you a few pointers to some papers.
And Fukushima is probably not that far from Kyoto. Just go this way.
It's not that far. But thank you. I think that's important to understand what communication means.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.